One, two, three. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We're going to kick off the third day of this conference. I hope you enjoyed it so far. Today, I will try to convince you that XML is your friend. And when I sent this proposal for the talk, I was like, I expect a room full of people that will look at me like that. So I understand that XML has a long history of being a really nice language and really easy way to express what you want, but it very often gets dirty very quickly. And the good thing about PowerShell is that it actually enables you to work with XML in the way that previously was not possible. And I really would like to show you some things that you can do with XML out of the box without even installing any tools on your laptop or generally computer. And I will try to walk through the different techniques that you can use to actually crack open the XML and just do something useful with it. So the agenda for today. So first of all, why XML? I will try to explain you, well, most of you probably know already, but just in case you didn't know, I will try to highlight some things where XML actually stands out and where you would actually need to use it or whether it's beneficial for you to know how to crack open these XMLs. And then, yeah, obviously, some of you that know me already know that I'm not PowerPoint MVP, I'm PowerShell MVP previously, now CDM. In case you remember what this abbreviation means, kudos, I don't, so I won't use it. So yeah, there'll be a lot of demos because, yeah, again, I'm PowerShell MVP, not PowerPoint MVP. And at the end, I will try to summarize everything and just close it with some kind of bullet points that will kind of hopefully show you what's the good things about XML. So the plan for demos. So we all start with what I call implicit for each, but I know it goes by many names because the team didn't even give it proper name. So people came up with really nice ideas. I like the one with implicit for each, which means that since version 3, you can now just dot a collection and access the members of a collection, which, when you work with XML documents, is really, really speeding up your working with it, because previously it was like for each. There you are. So nowadays, we can just go like this, give me just what you have there. Then I will zoom in on Select XML, which in my opinion is the best tool to work with XML in PowerShell. And I strongly recommend people who do that take a look at this commandlet. I will show you some demos how you can actually do that. In my opinion, in kind of nice and easy fashion that you can actually focus on what you want to achieve without even spending time on building .NET objects and calling some .NET methods. Something that you should know up front about me is that when I can use commandlet, I will never, ever use a class. Or I'm not scared of that. It's just that kind of like a religious thing. So if I can use commandlet, I will use it because it's there. So it's, well, and then my intent is easier to understand for others rather than just like, build this object and then just call it because you found this example on the Stack Overflow and it kind of works in the way you would expect it to. And then I will show you some real-life examples. One of them is actually like a week ago from my work. Another one is something that I often use, which is building the WPF UIs in XAML. So for that, I often just crack open the XAML because it's yet another XML. And that will come to the end. And if you still have some time, I will probably try to show you some about XSLT transforms, so how you can use those in PowerShell. There's no native support, I would say, so there's no commandlet that will do that for you. But still, because it's PowerShell, it's built on .NET, so you can access anything that exists in .NET, meaning that you can do anything that .NET allows you to do as well. Okay, too early for summary now? Yeah. Let's get the first. So this is what I mean by the XAML plain. Okay, implicit for each. So let's say we have very simple XML document. So let's just generate this one. I will store it in variable. For select XML later, I will need to have it in the PSD full parameter value that I don't have to specify it every time. But the implicit for each, the thing that I meant is that if you have XML document, you can just like browse through it using the dot notation without even thinking about two things. First of all, you don't have to worry about how many of those there are. So if I would add yet another node here, it would still work. Another like nested things. There will be collection of collections. It still works. And another thing that is kind of important when you work with XML is that you have to understand that XML is case sensitive. So there are two phrases about PowerShell that kind of relate to it. First of all, PowerShell is consistent unless it isn't. The one that relates to this one is PowerShell is not case sensitive unless it isn't. It is, sorry. So when you work with XML, you have to remember that it is case sensitive. However, when you use implicit for each, you don't have to worry about that, because if you look closely to this code, you have two nodes that kind of look the same, but they are not really, because they're slightly changed. So for XML, that's important. For us, not so much. So we have this two guys here. One is uppercase C, the other one is lowercase c. So for XML, it matters. For us, not so much. So this is how the implicit for each works. Previously, if I would have like more nested structure, what I would have to do if I would like to access the underlyings, I would have to do XML.no. That would work because it's just root, so just one property. But then for each, and well, actually that will work too, because yeah. So we have now collections of this case sensitive. I would have to like crack open all of them and just open nested properties. I don't have them here, unfortunately, so I cannot show you really, but it would just work. And all this magic happens because we have adapted type system in PowerShell, which means that if PowerShell works with .NET objects, it's all fine, right? Because it's built on top of .NET. But the moment when you start to look at other technologies like ADSI or WMI, or for example, XML, they don't really surface themselves in the way that PowerShell team considered like it would be nice to have it like that. So the way they did it is just they adapted the XML in a way that it looks like it's a complex object, not just one document that has some nodes. It's a complex object that has some node properties and some properties that have yet another properties that are also complex objects. So you can see it here. It's actually building up kind of as a tree of objects rather than just flat object with just a gazillion of properties. Then you can kind of obviously browse, but it's not really true in the .NET that it's that nested. So I think it's really nice that we have this opportunity and we really can open the XMLs in the way that, yeah, just outside PowerShell, it's not that easy. Another thing is that something I see very often. So people start to abuse, well, I would say, in my opinion, it's abuse this implicit for each in a way that, okay, I can crack it open, right? So now I can just do where object, for each object, which obviously works, but it gets nasty very quickly when you really want to, like, I want this property that has this attribute and this underlying node underneath it with this value of this, or just that the name of the node contains something. And that's where the XPath or select XML really kicks in, because you can obviously do those things here with that like implicit for each and just browse through that with the where object, for each object, and stuff like that. But I would strongly recommend not to do that unless it's really simple scenario. In such a case, it's not worth effort of learning XPath. But the moment when you start really work on something complex, I would strongly recommend to learn XPath. By the way, another thing about me, I'm really broken when it comes to languages, so when I see new language, I will pick it up like a toy. And so I like to write regex, read regex, see. Then the LDAP paths, LDAP filters, all those things, I always like to play with those. So that's why XPath happened, actually, because it was yet another language that I could learn and just do crazy things with it. So in case of the simple document like we have here, that's the blocking feature or blocking step with working with select XML and XML documents. Very often I see that like on forums and stuff like that. So people will open this very simple document, which kind of works. So if they just want to see the root, they just say / and they get the root. If they want to see the first row node, well, they can see that too, no problem. Everything works fine. And if they want to like see the things underneath it, still works. Yeah.
I don't see it, but where's the input for select XML?
Sorry?
You're calling select XML with a root node, but where is the XML content?
Here. So that's why they use the PS default parameter value, so they don't have to specify -XML every time. Yeah, it's kind of cheating, right? That's one of the things I actually like about PowerShell v3. You can cheat a lot. I mean, you can just do crazy things like this implicit for each and the PS default parameter values, and then you just do crazy things, and people are like, what? That's what happens, yeah. So yeah. So yeah, so very basic like syntax works just fine. It also works when you just like want to see underneath it. But the important thing is, again, I mentioned that XML is case sensitive. So you can see here, I tried to pretend it's not, and it already ignored me. So I tried to open this node case sensitive without really caring about case, and all of a sudden I just got nothing. So what happened? It's broken, right? Okay. Well, but it wouldn't work anyway. So yeah. But thank you. Yeah, that's definitely, that didn't help much as well, right? But if we care about cases, all of a sudden, oh wait, now I have just one node. Where's the second one? Well, I mentioned up front, right, that they are different from XML point of view. They are the same from our point of view. And this is one of these examples where the case really matters. You can also use the filters. So far we just browsed through the XPath. We use it like almost like a path in the file system. So you start with the root, then you go to the first node, second node. In case you would like to see the attributes, you would have to use it with this add syntax. Let me just double check what attribute I have here. So there's add attributes. I would just use select XML. Sorry, I forgot that I don't have this example. So add attribute, and then I get the attributes. By the way, the XML, I should mention that up front, has this concept of nodes, has concept of attributes. They are definitely different. You can see it here when we open, like when we look at XML. That's something that you also will miss, like at least at first, when you just do this implicit for each. Because here you cannot really tell the difference, right? There's attribute with some value, there's case sensitive with some elements in it. You cannot really see the difference between actual nodes underneath the main node and the attributes of the root. And for XML point of view, there are definitely different things, different beasts. So yeah, so we can open attributes and we can browse it. And we have to remember that it's case sensitive. But the filters are really fun part, because then you can really, like, instead of using where object, you can start to really be productive with XML. So here I just ask for any element. So that's why // means like find it anywhere in XML. It doesn't matter if it's at the root or is it like really nested. It doesn't matter to me. Just give me everything. The star means everything. And then I just have this filter. So I just want the things that have this attribute with the value, attribute value. So this is a way, let's say you have, for example, for unattended XML, you want to find something in unattended XML that like contains password. Well, you can just do that with XPath easily, rather than just because you have this one for domain, you have one for just local user. So like if you change administrator password during unattended, they are in different places. So if you would try to use it for each for that, you would definitely fail, because you would have to like crack it open once, find this one, then another one. Well, it will work eventually, but with XPath, you can do it much quicker. Yeah, so we can also run the functions. So here I just ask for text. So this is not so interesting. I mentioned that XML is case sensitive, and there's really nasty trick to force it not to be case sensitive, which means that, let's say I have those uppercase letters. So let's start with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So normally, if you want to make sure that your XML is not case sensitive anymore, you will translate them. That's stupid, right? You translate letters to letters, so you translate uppercase letters to lowercase letters, and all of a sudden, everything is lowercase. So you can just, pretend it's lowercase, and it's pretend it's not case sensitive anymore. So if I do it like that, well, I just translated this attribute value, and normally it wouldn't work if I would just not translate it. So let's translate something else, like C to C, and if I try that one, it doesn't work, it doesn't give me any values. But if I translate uppercase V, which is, you can see it in the value of attribute value, to lowercase v, all of a sudden I get results. So in simple situations where you actually know where you expect uppercase, lowercase, it looks simple, but trust me, the moment you start to use its generic way to translate it, you get whole alphabet, and if you have characters for your language, guess what? You have to translate those too, right? So it gets even bigger. And then, maybe there's you are in international company, so you have those guys from France that use some funny letters, and the guys from Poland that use funny letters, and the guys from Russia that use Cyrillics, and it's all of a sudden it becomes really trouble. But the reason why we have these troubles, actually, is because the .NET, not PowerShell, .NET supports only XPath 1.0 or 1.1. Anyway, XPath 1. There's XPath 2 that is so much smarter, but we cannot use it because it's not in .NET. So I think there's open, probably user voice these days, item that has thousands of votes that people just ask, okay, please support XPath 2, because really it just enables you to do so many other things that we won't be able to do nowadays because of this limitation. So yeah, this is that's where most people they see these examples, all is fine and dandy, and then they see this nice XML, they would like to parse it, and they try it, and it doesn't work. So let's read in this guy. You can probably guess from the name what's the problem with this guy. So yeah, let's just switch to this, and let's try. It's actually the manifest for the NuGet packages when you just upload your stuff to PowerShell Gallery. It contains a version. So let's see it. It's not there. What happened? Well, the problem is that this document defines default namespace. And the problem with default namespace is that you have to specify your default namespace when you use XPath. So XPath is really fragile when you use namespace. Well, fragile. It's actually cares about namespaces. You maybe don't care about them, but definitely XPath do. So what you have to do is define this namespace first. And well, here I knew what the namespace is, so I could crack it open, and all of a sudden I see this version, so maybe we can display it. So for each object node, just select whole thing. So you can see that the version is 1.1.7.0. The reason why it worked is because I specified, first of all, I defined the namespace in this hash table, which is a really simple thing to do if you look at that. You just specify that this is my namespace, this is the URI that it actually implements, or something, the schema that it implements. But normally you have a problem with finding these namespaces. So I found few examples. This one is not really super, doesn't cover all the scenarios. But in this case, as you can see, I could easily find this default namespace. This is the one that it's without any name, because yeah, it's default, so it doesn't have a name. And using this code, you can actually find the namespace it defined on the root. There's better code. I didn't manage to find it because the internet here works very well. but I wanted to prepare it. Sorry, it didn't happen because I kind of had it in mind, but I then didn't find the proper example. Anyway, you can find those namespaces, which means that you can, like on the fly, prepare this schema thing, right? You can just crack open the XML, find all the namespaces, define your hash table, and all of a sudden your syntax will start to work. Obviously, you have to, in XPath, you have to use these namespaces as well. So as you can see here, I didn't just say version, I did say def, which is like default namespace here, :version. So you need to make sure that you use this syntax rather than the syntax without namespaces. But still, this is one of the examples, like when I was starting to use XML, it was like, oh, it's so nice, let's try this document. Oh, wait. And I know that a lot of people like stop there and they just don't move further, but it's all really about namespaces. You just have to define those namespaces and you are good to go. Okay. So this is the code. So now for the fun part, so real life examples. Any questions maybe so far? Okay, that's a bad sign, but yeah, let's continue. Let's just remove this because I really will not now depend on the select XML, like the default values. So the problem that we had at work not too long ago was that we have workflow application, and we were migrating into newer version, and it really builds on top of XML documents. So most of the things that this application does are defined in XML documents, and it allows you to export the the nice graphs that you draw on the web page. It allows you to export them in XML format. So if you know how to play with XML or just work with XML, you can actually find a lot of information about the application itself or the problems that it has. So the problem that we had was that the schema of one of the elements changed, and it was not reflected in our workflows. In turn, it meant that one of the systems were creating changes, and it was giving back information. Okay, this is my change number, but our workflow was like, I don't see your change number because you are using output key, and I expect output variable. So all of a sudden, all the workflows were just like stuck because they were waiting for this change number to actually continue with anything else. So my colleagues this is not really something I do every day, but they knew that I kind of cracked open this XML a lot of times before, so they just jumped to my desk and was like, oh, we have this problem, let's just fix it. And I was like, okay, let's just look this information up, what's going on there. This is actually an already fixed version of this. So I open the XML. That's usually the first step you do, but just find one example of where it was actually broken, and just like searched for the patterns. Yeah, so we need those guys to just like display it later, but let's crack open this XML document. So I started with, okay, let me show me all the actions that have, as you can hear, a type contains. So it means that it's kind of like cutting the string, right? So it kind of contains. Here, we'll just take the attribute at type, so attribute of the given action, and we'll just take part of it. So I don't care about the rest of it. I just care about the beginning of it. Of course, I could just say at type equals because I saw what is there, but I wanted to show you that you can really be very brief about it. You didn't have to go crazy about it. And I got this one. Well, that didn't help me to see, okay, what's going on. But because it's XML, in the end, that I get, it's possible to just, first of all, go up. So I can just go to parent node. And parent node of the action is actually the workflow. So yeah, the girls from the service desk, they needed information, okay, what's the workflow name? So which workflow we should crack open, in this UI and just change the value there. So yeah, I needed to provide them with information. What's the parent node? And this is here. So parent node, and the property I knew that was, or actually its attribute was WF name. So yeah, they were fine with this. So let's just add this one to the output. Yeah, that should be fine. So now they had information, okay, this is the name of the action, this is name of the workflow, and they could already start working with it. But they started, and they say, okay, but some workflows still don't work. So now, that wasn't enough, because they thought that they changed all of them, but there were 2 people working on it. So probably one was thinking that the other already did this, so she didn't touch it. So the next thing they asked, okay, can you check which are still broken? So I said, okay, let's crack open this guy. As you can see, I didn't dare to just like use, again, implicit for each. I decided, okay, let's just XPath within XPath. So it's like an inception kind of scenario here. I'm looking for the property of this action that has the name output key, and I'm displaying the CData section, which was actually where they kept the value of this variable. So let's just try that. So now I have those defined. And, well, initially, it was, let me just format it as a table. Yeah, that was a very good reason why I did it. And we don't see it. Yeah, because it cuts. Yeah, okay, let me just zoom out a little bit so that we see all the columns, hopefully. Yeah, so this one, as I said, this one is already fixed version, but initially it was like half-half, so half of them were already an output variable, so fixed. The other one was output key, so I could tell them, okay, these guys you still need to fix. And also initially I provided them because they also asked, okay, we know where to find these variables, like the actions where we should fix it, but what should be the name of variable? We don't know. I mean, we can kind of guess, but can you just check it? So I initially just gave them the report where it was just output key with all the like values that they should put in there. And then I gave them a report, okay, this is what you fixed already, this is still not fixed. And then eventually the Rust export was already fine, so they were like, oh, yeah, problem solved. So yeah, that's one of the situations when actually, understanding how you can crack open XML and using XPath and select XML can really save the day. Another thing is not really saving the day. It's more like I don't want to think too much. So most of the UIs I create are in XAML or in WPF. Well, XAML obviously is the definition, so it's XML that I use to kind of explain what I want to see in the end. So when you have this, you usually want some control over some controls that you have on this. So let's say you have some image and you want to kind of like change it when something happens, or you have button and you want to add some events to this button so that if somebody clicks the button, it will be like kind of smart thing to do that they actually get some action going, right? Not just do click, 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 and it's like nothing happens. So the easiest way I found to like just find all those elements that I care about is just name them. And once I name them in XML, well, guess what? It's just attribute on XML. Obviously, I have to know the schema again, because XAML has like default namespace and that's X namespace, so I kind of need to know where they are. But the moment I know where they are, I can just create some kind of hash table of my named elements in my UI. And, well, then I can just reference to those variables and just like, again, add some events to the given control. So yeah, this is one of the situations where I could potentially do it by hand, so just like I know the name, so I can just list them one by one. But, well, I'm lazy, so I'd rather not to. Okay. And the last example is something that people often miss or just ignore. The beauty about working with some of those things is that you don't have to write it yourself. So this is a perfect example of this situation, because if you ever worked with the event viewer, let's just open it. Show event viewer, sorry, event log. So if you work with it, you can usually filter a given view, right? So if I filter current log and I say, okay, let's just give me just errors. It gives me all errors, but on top of that, I can see here what filter it actually applied to my document to get there. And once I see this, I can kind of take it from there and build on top of that. Also, if you open the given event and details, you can also see the XML view. So you can actually, by looking at that, and with some experience about XPaths, you can, okay, I want this guy, and I just want, because, I'm not sure how about you, but I had like a zillion of problems with DHCP here. So I wanted to see all the DHCP problems. So I found one, XML. And what I did next is, okay, I know that it's like level is 2, event ID is this, and well, will just show me the things that happened after I arrived here. And I know that provider name is this one. So yeah, if we just look it up, yeah, that explains why my internet was working so very well. As you can see, there are a lot of issues with assigning the network address. So yeah, with this like very simple knowledge about XML and just like being able to read the events in the event log, you can just by doing this like reading and just kind of comparing, so kind of reusing UI to do something smarter than that, you can actually achieve a lot more, because you can just like, first you just have like the system level 2, but then I looked at, okay, what's the event ID for this DHCP problems? So I just added and event ID equals something. And then I thought, okay, let's just give me the, I don't want to see all the problems that I had in the like whole life. I just want to see the problems that happened over here. Well, all life is probably not the best way, because well, obviously the logs rotate, so I definitely don't see whole history of my life in it. But in this case, it was just, okay, I don't care about what happened in my house, and I definitely don't want to show it on stage. How terrible is my network at home? It's actually quite good. But yeah, I just wanted to show you how easily you can just crack open the XML view, because this, I really didn't filter it like manually. I just started with this the level, and then just added things to it. And the only thing that I had to check in the like just actual event log was this provider, because yeah, that's on just parameter over here, provider name equals something. So you have to know what provider are you targeting. Otherwise, you get too much. And the fun part about it is that once you have this XML, you can, again, just like do the reverse, right? Because it's just XML. So you potentially should be able to go here and say, I want to filter current log, go here, and just edit query manually. I wouldn't dare to do that now on stage. I haven't tried it before. I'm pretty sure that it will fail somehow, but let's be crazy about that, right? What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, I said to one of the delegates, it's I don't have demos that will fail. Well, I have to figure one at least that may fail. Otherwise, it's not fun at all, right? It's odd how it displays that, but let's see how that goes. Yeah, obviously that doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, if I would have properly formatted XML, because another issue is that here I use this. So that's the only thing that you should be careful when you kind of copy paste the things that come from the event log. What it expects is that XML. So it uses XML to define the query. And XML, if you would just put this guy, it just breaks because, well, it's special character in XML. So even actually, I can actually show you that very quickly. So let's just clear filter. So if I do filter current log and I say not anytime but custom range, and I say that I want events after 20th, you will see that it actually changes this greeter to end GT semicolon, sorry. So, and that's because we have this formatted as this XML, right? So in XML, there are some special characters. The greeter then is one of them. So in my XPath, I don't need it to be replaced. So if you want to do the reverse, so you have this XML filter in the event viewer, remember to do like the opposite. So if you see and greeter semicolon, just replace it with just greater than, because otherwise it doesn't work. And I tried it myself. I was working with some kind of logic to pick up some errors that we have with NICs, so the NICs will disconnect, and I wanted to just get the things that happened after a certain date. Well, initially I just copy-paste it, and obviously it didn't work. And I was struggling with, okay, maybe I have a typo somewhere. That's something I always assume first, because that's how terrible I am in typing. And it wasn't typo. It was just that this syntax wasn't really picked up by the get-win event, because I was using some elements that are fine in XML, like here, but they don't make any sense in just like pure XPath. Okay. This is that. Okay. Looks like we have some 10 minutes still, so we will try to now crack open the transforms. Any of you know XSLT transforms, what they do? Excellent. So, what? It's great that some people actually know it. I don't know it myself very well, to be honest. I use it occasionally, but it's like black box almost. So, XSLT transforms they're designed to use your XPath knowledge to kind of read the XML document and change it, which is very nice sometimes, especially, let's say you have a situation that you have a configuration document for your application. But in one environment, let's say test, you are pointing to the database server. So the connection strings that you have in your configuration contains this information. But in production, well, obviously, first of all, you don't want test instance to connect to production database, and you don't want the opposite to happen as well. They should be separate. So you should be able to just take this XML document that comes from developers, and with just simple magic, just change this connection string to the one that you expect in your production environment. By the way, that's something that Octopus does very well, and we will speak about that with Daniel this afternoon. But we can do that ourselves, and actually, I was attempting to be Octopus myself, and I created some kind of DSC resource. It was a crazy idea, trust me, because what the problem with this idea was that, okay, you have to be able to tell what the state is. So to test, you need to have access to XSLT transform. Otherwise, you cannot tell if the transform was fine. So I just added alternate stream with information where my XSLT transforms are. So it was really a terrible idea. So don't do it at home. But definitely the XSLT transforms give you a lot of benefits. So let's say I just have this function, and as I mentioned, there is no built-in or commandlet way to do that. So that's why I'm using just pure.NET. I'm creating objects. I close my eyes and just type in things, and I try to pretend that I didn't do it. So then I can have a function, and then I can do that like PowerShell, right? So I have this function, and I have this configuration file. I have XSL, which is just transform file, and I can actually show you here. So the initial configuration file looks like that. We have this all different values, but one of them I want to show you because it will be easy to notice that something changed. Is that we have this appender in the I think it's just log4.net configuration. So there's appender that writes to the file d data Qpid server Qpid status log in the let's say it's in the test environment, right? And then I have the XSL that will just kind of convert it. So XSL, as you can see here, I just defined some parameters for my XSL that I will later use. So this is like parameters for the function. You can think XSLT as a XML functions to just convert things. That's how I see it. It's probably not accurate when it comes to technical terms, but that's how I use it. And what I do here is just, okay, this is find anything that matches this guy, and just, sorry? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I launched it for the ISC, but not for this guy. Yeah, let's just hide this guy. Go away. So as you can see here, I just have the XPath that defines where the things should happen. The next thing, I say what I want to change. And then I say, OK, give me the value of this parameter, and just drop it in this location. What will happen is the XPath will just kind of find the placeholder or just actual value, actually. It doesn't matter. It can be both placeholder and actual value. Usually it's actual value. And it will just take whatever is there, just remove it, and just put whatever you put in your parameter. So if it won't find a parameter, it will just remove the whole thing. So it's really important to remember what parameters you actually have and make sure that you actually provide them with values. Otherwise, you just clean up the XML, which is probably not what you wanted. But anyway, this XSL, you can have like multiple. So this one is for production environment, but you can have something different for the test. So let's say the test, UAT, and production. Well, in test and UAT, there are not so many differences. So you probably just want to change like one or two things. But when you go to production, there's like probably a gazillion of things that you want to change. And then your production XSL is just growing exponentially. And if we run it, so let's just try to set this configuration. And I should have now text XML, which is almost the same file, but with things change in it. So as you can see here, I had a parameter log4net file appender that was pointing to the data Cupid log. Now I have it here, where if we go back here, it was this old value. So it did replace the XML value in the document for me. So to show you that it's not just smoke and mirrors, let's just break things. Oh, actually, I break it here. Yeah, I didn't want to type it on stage because that would be terrible. And I would probably make so many typos that you cannot possibly imagine. So let's just create this. Test 2 exists, but test 1 exists, but test 2 is not there yet. So you can see that I actually created now. So I just changed the log4net file appender value to something completely different. And I'm applying the same XSL. I just changed the parameter name values. And now I have this file. And as you can see here, hopefully, yeah. So as you can see, this is actually the changed value. So now we can see that the ctemp is used instead of the previous value that was the Cupid stuff. So I think it's, when you have a situation like that, and this actually is something that came from our developers. I didn't write myself. So our developers, they were working with multiple environments, so they had to create from dev and UAT. And what they did in the end, they just created a PowerShell script to actually do that, which was, in my opinion, was awesome. So I kind of steal their code. I can credit them. It was Igor, my colleague from work. He moved to Australia now, so well, we won't see each other that often anymore. But yeah, it was really nice experience to work with this guy because he definitely got it with the PowerShell. Okay, let's just finalize it. So yeah, remember, ignorance fuels the fear. So if you don't know how to use XML, obviously you will be like, oh my God, it's XML. But yeah, once you learn it, like the basics of it, so first of all, this for each implicit for each that allows you to like really browse through it almost. But also the XPath, I really strongly recommend to spend some time with XPath. There are really good examples online. If you ever read the cookbook from Lee Holmes, he also has some references at the end. So actually that's where I actually started with XPath, was from the PowerShell cookbook from Lee Holmes, where it has all the nice references at the end. I strongly recommend reading them, not just XPath one, but also the regular expression one. They're really, really good. Yeah, commandlets make your life easier. So I could do the same, almost the same, with the select nodes or something like that. So I could actually use .NET methods to get the same results. The problem with this approach for me is that, well, it's just using the .NET methods. I don't hate it, but if I can avoid it, I will. And also, you need to understand the schema, so you need to look at the XML first before you do anything with it. Because if you don't see the schema, you don't understand what's inside of it, you can definitely, you will start working with it, and you will get frustrated so quickly that you cannot possibly imagine. But reading the document, so you just open it in like the editor, like I open it in the code these days because it's kind of lightweight and it works pretty well with different file types. So Visual Studio Code, you can install it. It's like, I think it's free. Yeah. Yeah, so you can install it on your box. It's really lightweight, and you just can open whole folder. It's almost like Sublime, but slightly different. I never really used Sublime, so I cannot really say for the fact, but I know that it looks very similar to my friends who is a Python developer. He uses Sublime, I use Visual Studio Code, and we kind of feel and the nice thing about the Visual Studio Code, by the way, is that it has the Git support. So if you really use the Git, something that we also will show a little bit during our presentation at 4, is then Visual Studio Code is really nice because you can really integrate it with the Git repositories and just like, okay, this is my changes that I just committed, and it just works. So yeah, if you don't open the XML, if you open XML in Notepad, I'm sorry. I mean, really, you won't see anything if you open it in the editor that doesn't understand XML. You really should use editor that does understand XML, because then it can show you with something like as basic as syntax highlighting. Okay, this is where you are. This is your attribute. This is your node. This is the value for this attribute. So you can see all those things very easily, and you didn't have to like figure out it yourself. Any questions? Hit me. Okay. I couldn't find documentation of all the possible cases. Yeah, that's actually that's a big problem to me too. So I very often, I have opposite problems. I usually just open XMLs, not write them myself. But there's one example of like XML documents that I did write. It was the PS1 XMLs for PowerShell. So I wanted to write them, but I didn't find a good way to actually do that, to be honest. So unless it's documented in like MSDN. No, so yeah, you should be aware that the URL you can see in the schema, don't try to open it in the browser. I mean, if it works, it's probably broken or something, because it's no, sorry? It wants to know where. Yeah, it's just like, it looks like an URI, but it isn't, so don't really try to open it. I haven't seen one that did work in the browser. Maybe I was not lucky enough, but I don't think any of them works. It's almost like a nickname for the namespace. So I don't see that's the like. Sometimes you even don't have the URI. You will have just something colon something. So then it's obvious that you shouldn't use it in browser. For those guys, you kind of think it's, oh yeah, let's just open it and see the schema. No, that won't work. So yeah, I think that MSDN usually is the one that can help you, but not always. So unless somebody documented the schema that he's using, well, you're kind of out of luck. So I would just like knock on the doors of the people that actually created the product, and sometimes it helps. Sometimes they actually do have some kind of schema definition somewhere, but I think not always. Sometimes I feel that it's just like they think that's like a schema, but it's not really. There's no schema in it, actually. It's just like, let's hope for the best, and our application will understand it. You don't have to, something like that, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know something about the difference of performance of using the command.select XML versus using the .select node method from the object itself?
Should I repeat the question for recording? Okay, so the question was about performance between select XML and select nodes from the just pure.NET. I'm pretty sure that select nodes is faster because it's just .NET, and there's always a cost in launching the commandlet. And also, the problem with select XML, the thing that I hate about select XML is that you always have to access this .node. I mean, have you ever used this just select XML and didn't access .node? Because it didn't happen to me once that I really needed the information that's usually, like initially you get this information back from select XML, and I honestly didn't use it once. Let me see, go back. Yeah, so, yeah, I probably need to define it again with this guys. So if you just go with the select XPath, XML, you have this node, path, and pattern. I do use node. Okay, I do use node. I don't use path because it's usually input stream or just file, and I don't use pattern because, well, this is what you're provided, so I know what pattern is, right? So so it means that you almost always have to use pipe for each, and pipe is even more expensive than just like plain. So yeah, obviously, if you are about performance, then there is very good reason to not use select XML. But for the most part, I would say that the performance is not really like crucial factor in this kind of operations. It's more readability that is matters. So it's always like this in PowerShell. I would say that it usually does like, do you want to make it look like a PowerShell and like be easy to read, or do you want to have a performance? Because those two often just go in like separate roads. So yeah. I don't think I have more.
No, you don't have more.
So just a few words about the company that I work for.
Okay.
So yeah, questions. Well,
Sorry, go ahead. You have 2 more minutes. I was wrong.
okay. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that you kind of stopped me here. I trust ladies again generally, so that's yeah. But if you are married for like 15 years, you kind of learn that it's the only way. So we are currently hiring, so and it's mainly for the people like you because we kind of care about automation. So we have like 4 like really hard code scripters at work, but we want to have more. And we are looking for people that work with Exchange and Link and SCCM, so basically the core Microsoft technologies, because they kind of spawn us in different teams. I'm now in awesome team, which is like automation and monitoring. So I open the PowerShell, first thing in the morning I open PowerShell. The last thing in the evening is I don't close it actually. I just lock my keyboard. But yeah, so I actually like 2 weeks ago I told my colleague that we will present together. You know what? Today I'm really tired of PowerShell. I would like to do something else. And he was like, okay, that's a perfect place to be. Yeah, so we have a lot of smart people, a lot of developers, so we actually have this conversation all the time. So that's why I didn't have to crack open XMLs too much myself. I had smarter people to do that for me. That's why I could just reuse their code. So it's really, we are not really DevOps kind of culture, but it's very close to it. And there's no corp, so it's really like small teams, really not so many people. I think we have around 1K people worldwide, and in our office like 500 people. And the ratio is like, there's like 200 people that are in IT, 200 people more or less that do the business, and the rest is like HR and finance and stuff like that. So as you can see, the proportions are like almost like half of the company is the IT people. So definitely people that you can talk to, and they want to do like this face when you say PowerShell or something like that. So yeah, that's what I had prepared for today. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, see you hopefully at 4 at our next session about Octopus and DSC. Thank you.